So, good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to this CityxChange webinar on the implementation and guidance for the Bold City Vision Framework. The presentation will be given by Gerrit and Geir, and I'd like them to, from Asker Kommune, I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves later on. And I'd like to thank them for taking the time to present to us their insights on how this Bold City Vision framework was implemented in Asker municipality. Today we have partners from many municipalities and cities and across Europe. From Trondheim, of course, we have Asker municipality and Trondheim Kommune. From Ireland, we have Limerick. From Romania, we have the municipality of Alba Iulia. From Bulgaria, we have the municipality of Smolyan. From the Czech Republic, we have the municipality of Pisek. From Spain, people from municipality of Sestao Beri. From Estonia, we have the municipality of Voru, and also we have partners from many countries, such as Norway, Ireland, Netherlands, and Spain. That is all I would like to do, just to give a bit of introduction to the people attending this seminar. At the moment, we have 37 participants, and they they've joined this call today from many corners and cities from Europe. As a means to context, just a bit of introduction. The CityxChange is a pan-European project that is trying to create innovative solutions for the implementation and creation of positive energy blocks and positive energy districts. They are districts and blocks that create more energy than they consume. A key element in this project is to engage the citizens and influence a positive energy behavior. But this engagement with the community and trying to motivate people to get behind the idea of creating a positive energy city and a positive energy district is to show them a direction that the city is aiming to go for. So it's good to have a vision that's co-created with the citizens, and that vision will then be the motivating factor behind this massive change that we are trying to initiate the CityxChange and work through as part of our project. But to create such a vision, we obviously need a framework. We need a structure that we need to follow, or we can follow. And the CityxChange partners, led by Trondheim Kommune, have created this framework. And I'm delighted to have today Gerrit and Geir from Asker municipality to give us some insights in how they went about implementing this framework, this framework in Asker municipality. Without further ado, I would like to invite either Gerrit or Geir from Asker municipality to start the presentation, but first of all, to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gerrit, and I'm the head of a program called Sustainable Asker in the municipality of Asker. And we are very happy to be invited to present for you some of the experiences we've done with the framework. And I'd like to start with saying that for us, the framework was introduced to us, I guess, in September last year. So our experience is not very long. And we read the report, we fell in love with the framework, and we just started using it. So we are also eager to hear from you, because our understanding of the framework might be different because we've just taken it and used it in our local context. So that's quite exciting for us as well to hear back from you when we have presented on our understanding of the framework. But before I start with the presentation, guys, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Geir. I work together with Gyrid at the Center of Learning and Innovation in Asker Municipality. My main tasks concern innovation. I work as an innovation strategist and a portfolio manager. And in these days, of course, a lot with sustainability to implement the sustainability goals in a local context in our municipality. So Gyrid and I, we are colleagues in this work, and we have been testing a little bit around this framework that we will be happy to show you today.
Okay, I'll share my screen with you so that you see. Let's see. There we go. Everyone can see this the screen.
This is perfect. I can see it very well.
Perfect. Okay, what I'm going to do is first to give us a small introduction about localizing the SDGs, because that's the context in which we have used the framework. So I'm just going to show you a couple of slides to give you an idea of where we are and how we've worked with that. And then we're going to look at the framework and how we have used it. And we have some major learnings and insights with using it that we want to share with you. And in the end, I'll say something about how we think we can go forward with the continuing work with the framework. So first, just to give you an idea of how we've worked with the SDGs and localizing them in Asker, we want to show you that Asker municipality is a new municipality from the 1st of January. There were 3 municipalities, and we have merged them into one big one. And in that process, the politicians decided to build the new municipality on the SDGs. So we actually had to find out, and what does that mean? How do we do that? This slide shows you that we have taken the Sustainable Development Goals and put them together with both the national expectations to municipal planning and the regional planning strategies to work out our own municipal master plan. Together with Pure Consulting, we developed a method for doing this, going from the global goals and taking them all the way down through processes of looking at what do the goals mean for us locally, what are our challenges, what are our opportunities for change, and do an assessment of which ones are the ones to use going forward the first 4-year period. So we've taken the SDGs and localized them by using some of them as they are in the UN formulation of them. We have also taken some of them and adapted them slightly to our Norwegian Asker context. And we have also taken in some of our own targets because the SDGs don't match with everything in the Norwegian municipal context. So we have as is adapted to Asker and our own Asker targets. And the result of this is a new municipal master plan, which has been proposed, and the politicians are going to pass this by June this year, so it's not passed quite yet. But in the plan, we have 8 main goals. We have 28 targets, which of 16 are directly from the SDGs, and 12 of them are the Asker targets, and 87 strategies to reach the goals and targets. And we have also taken this and put it into our budget, the first budget of the new municipality. But we're also working on how we can, in a better way, map our budget towards the SDGs. In for the next coming years. And then going to the framework.
One short comment from me here, Gyrid. I have posted in the chat the link to the web pages that detail a little bit more our work with the SDGs and the different reports that are available in English if people should be interested in following up on that later. So that's a link in the chat for those of you that might be interested.
So we started in September a close cooperation with Trondheim Kommune about the SDGs and the work on that in Norway. And that's when we were introduced to the framework for the first time. So we read the report and were very interested in looking closer into this. So the first thing we did was that we started on a Norwegian translation of the framework. And our first lesson was in the translation process to use verbs to signify actions. The framework is a framework for action. So we have, you'll see that we have changed some of the wording from the original framework to accentuate the action part. And then we also looked at presenting it in a slightly simpler way. So we made this, this slide here where we have connected the purpose to the why. Why do we need to standardize? Why do we need to develop policies and so on? And a lesson learned in this process as well is when we present the framework for people in our organization, this is an easier and more accessible way of going into the framework, so to say. When I first met the framework, I needed to work with it to understand the content of it. So I made this Excel framework for my own purpose, as you can see, and it has the processes going down and the phases going over the horizon away. So I started actually just putting in text to understand what are the different elements, and then I started mapping what do we actually do already that's relevant to put into the different boxes. That's kind of a system with boxes where you can just put in what we are doing already. So it became for me first a way of mapping activities and projects and measures that we already were doing. And this actually helped me understand the framework more in depth, and making this, coloring it up with green things that we already were doing and red colors where we weren't doing anything, and maybe some yellow where we had thoughts about starting processes but hadn't started them yet. The insight was that, wow, we actually do quite a lot of things across this framework, but they are definitely not interlinked. And that in itself was a lesson, because it showed the potential of working across the framework to connect processes to each other, and also to map out who needs to talk together to accelerate progress.
Because we have to be honest enough also to see that the first time we did this, we were a little bit, we were of course happy to find many green slots here. We are actually doing many things, but when we looked a little bit in depth into it, as you said, we saw that since these things are not interlinked, it might not be as green as we thought at first, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Geir. And also showing this to other people in the organization, I think helped with the understanding of the importance of working cross-sectorally, and also seeing the same picture, actually. of what we're doing and assessing the picture that we see. So in this process of understanding the framework as well, we tried presenting it for the high-level leaders as the whole framework, and found out that it was easier to start building understanding by just presenting the processes. And the processes are so easy to connect to from wherever you are in the organization, whatever kind of work you do. So all the high-level leaders could identify their role into the framework when we did it in a more easy way and taking away all the elements, all the 30 elements. So that was a lesson, that we need to start with the simple things, and then we can elaborate and build understanding over time by doing that.
Also, one little nugget of learning from that process is that when you present, as you write in this slide, in a short time, you have a very short time when you talk to the high-level leaders very often. So for them to have 30 boxes to try to put things into, it became very important to try to find the right box, and that takes up more time than it's needed, and it's a little bit more complex to look at 30 things than, as you say, to point out these 6 processes and then try to find yourself to put your project, to put your activities into these 6 at first.
So after testing this out with the high-level leaders, we found out that we wanted to use the framework for mapping it with all our counselors and people from different parts of the organization, to find out more about what are we already doing, which projects and processes are in the pipeline already. So doing that, we actually just made a kind of a tablecloth, a work tablecloth of the whole framework, and did 2 workshops where we asked people to map up activities and projects they were working on into the framework. So that's also a lesson that it's a good tool for using into a workshop, because this becomes a common language in a way, and a way of looking at what we do from different perspectives. So it actually works fine on the table. Doing the workshops, we started from the top, from the standardization process. And that was a lesson learned during these 2 workshops. But next workshop we're going to start at the bottom. Start with the projects, because that's where people easily can link in. People know what they are doing, and a lot of the innovation work is in projects. So that's an easier entry point than going into the more complex processes like standardization and policy making.
One thing we learned here as well, as I can remember walking among the tables, is the people that were in this workshop, they were not smart city experts or people working specifically with energy solutions or with these things. These were advisors and people from all over the municipality working on a broad variety of subjects and subject matters. So when we tried to start with like standardizing, with data collection and these things, many of them weren't doing those things at all, so it became a little bit alienating to them. But when we looked at the projects and we had the context of the SDGs and sustainability, they all had projects. They all had some, that was the common denominator that we found across all these varieties of people that came.
So after the workshops, we've taken all these post-it notes and put them into a huge big Excel as well. So now that's kind of our knowledge base for going forward. So using the framework for workshops, also discussing on the base of what we are doing already, where do we need to go from now? And already in the workshop as well, people could say, hey, oh, you're working with this and I'm working with that. That we need to actually link and talk together about common interests in our work. So that was also an effect that working in the framework actually links people together across the sectors.
Gyrid, approximately how many different objects, all in all, did you gather through these workshops? Just approximately.
300. Yeah. Okay, so looking closer to the cross-sectoral work and internal work processes, we had the same experience with the advisors that we had with the high-level group, but creating the necessary understanding before you go into the depth of the framework is important. So what we want to do also going forward is to build more understanding, because the potential in the framework is great. But we need to do that step by step so that we can utilize the full potential of the framework as a linking tool as well. And also, of course, we did meet some people saying that, oh, who has said that this framework is to be important? Why haven't I heard about this before? So, of course, linking it with the high-level leaders and our systems for planning and governing is important to kind of help people accept this as a useful way of working together. The SDGs are cross-sectoral, and working together across sectors, both inside the organization but also in the whole society, is very important if we are to achieve the goals. So one of our lessons learned as well is that you can use it going into linking processes across the organization, and I'll show you how. This is our organization with executive chief officer and his staff on the top, and the different units. And we work towards the same goals. In our budget process, we distributed the goals and targets from the municipal master plan into all different parts of the organization. But linked to the special unit, you can see that the colors differs. You can see that some of the units will be working towards the same goals, and some of them will have like more education or more health or more sustainable cities across the organization. So this helps us to see who needs to be in lead for different processes, and also to identify which parts of the organization are working towards the same goals. So using the framework as a way of linking the organization together towards the different goals, not only the big picture, but also the picture in the smaller parts of it, is a way to go forward. And the framework can help us in a very concrete way to find each other in ongoing processes, because the processes are mapped as they are in the framework. In working with external relations, the framework can also be useful, because the framework in itself is a common language and an understanding of processes that we work with from different perspectives. But the framework doesn't say something about which themes or challenges we need to work on. And that's because we need to have a local view at that and link it to a national and international understanding of the challenges. So you can see that the SDGs, they are the big picture, and you need to work on the locally relevant themes and challenges. And then when you play in the framework into that picture, it will help with finding external partners in different processes and mapping up what we can partner up on. So in an external view, it also helps us to actually find each other across societal sectors. So summed up, based on what we have learned so far, we will be working on creating understanding of the content and linking the framework to the concrete challenges that we see based on KPI assessment of USCID, based on what we know of what we need to develop on going forward. And we want to work on using it to help different actors relate their roles into common work and in partnerships. So define areas of change and link the actors together to achieve their support and become partners to achieve the goals. That's how far we have come in these last few months.
Gerrit, thank you very much, and Gert, thanks very much for the presentation. It is excellent. It's really practical advice that you have provided us with. I have taken a lot of notes from the lessons that you've learned in implementing this framework. And I would like to ask you a question. And if everybody is, ready now, we might, take on a number of questions. My first question to you is, what role does the organizational structure play in implementing this framework, especially in addressing the interlinking of the projects? Very often, local authorities are very much siloed. And what can we do in terms of the organizational structure to support the implementation of such a framework?
That's a very, very good question. I'm going back to share with you now. You see the framework here, right? One of the lessons we could have lifted into the presentation was actually how it has helped us identify or look at our own organization. Because if you see here, the two first processes, they belong to one definite part of our organization. So when we presented this, it was easy for them to say, okay, oh, well, this actually describes our part of the work. And then the bottom four processes, they kind of belong to the processes are developed in the organization that Geir and I work with. So just looking at the framework and thinking where in the organization do we work with the different processes helped us to understand how these different units need to work together to make the processes integrated into each other.
One more comment about how we have tried to look cross-sectorally on this is that we have also implemented and we have put the framework into our governing processes when it comes to governance, total governance of the municipality as a whole, in our planning process, in our reporting processes, and all of these things that makes the government, the governance of our municipality. We have formulated that into a document, a procedural document that is mandatory for the whole organization to follow. Also, our politicians have been giving some education in these governing processes just after the election last autumn, and they have thereby also been presented for a high-level version of the framework, so that to make it known, we have tried to do this in a structured manner.
Thank you for the answer. I much appreciate it. For all the other participants, if you wish to ask a question, if you could please raise your hand, using the participants button on your Zoom video. So if you go and click on manage participants, you can raise your hand. And if I see somebody raising their hand, and I can already see Alicia from Arup, if you want to go ahead and ask the question, Alicia.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot. That was very, very interesting, and it really helped to understand the process. I appreciate it a lot, and I'd like to know a little bit more about the workshops that were carried out. And because you mentioned that there were several, and that you had also learned some lessons that you would incorporate into the next lesson, into the next workshops, excuse me. So I'd like to know if those were all with the same stakeholders, but you had a number of lessons, or if you focused on different groups. And just a little bit more about that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, we did the workshops because we were, the program that I am building now, Sustainable Asker, needs to map up what is already going on in the organization. So that was why we invited to these workshops. And we found out that the framework would help us actually do the mapping and do a kind of a sorting while we were doing the work. We did 2 different ones with different parts of the organization. In both workshops, we had probably around 30 participants in each of them, I would guess. And they work with education or with health or with technical department or all over the organization. So our experience was that they, of course, mapped from the top of their heads. So doing the sorting afterwards would be necessary to see what kind of projects on different levels did we actually come up with. But the sorting that they did themselves in the processes on the table was of big help for us when we were going to work with what all the post notes and understand what is the picture, the big picture of all of this together. And as I said as well, the workshops were facilitated with first an introduction to sustainable development and to the goals of the municipality, why we're doing this. And the purpose was to help us build the program and identify areas of change that we need to work on going forward, but also the resources that we already have in the organization. So they had to put on a project if it was a project, but also who works with this, so that we can go back and ask Morten about project X to gain even more insight. So it actually helps us map up which resources in the organization are working with different things as well. But what we experienced was, and I guess that's kind of a new beginner's failure, that we wanted to do it so right. So we started working from top left, you know, with the standardizing and so on. And as Geir said, and I think that was alienating for people that were in the field just doing their thing. So I think the main lesson was that next time I think we will have a better overall process if we start with where people are, and then we can elaborate and use the elaboration as also a way of learning the need for standardization and the need for the link to the policy development and so on. So it's kind of a pedagogic challenge to find out what do you put in the bottom and how do you build on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Tina to raise a question, and then I'm going to ask Rosie. So Tina from Voru, Estonia. Tina, if you want to go ahead and ask the question.
Hello, everyone. I just, do you hear me?
We can hear you very well.
Okay, very good. I wanted to know, is it only a development plan that you have in your town? Does it cover all different topics and not only energy topic.
Yes, the municipal master plan covers it all. The whole society, and also the role of the municipality in developing society. And it covers all topics of societal development.
Okay, and this is the base for the for budget strategy or whatever financial strategy.
Yes.
Yeah, because why I ask is that we already have our town development plan and we have our budget strategy plan, and now we need to do this policy division somehow linked to it. So that's why I thought, is it you did something big and you included everything together in one document?
Yes, and what I could suggest just from our experience with this was to use the framework and link it to the plan that you do have, and to move the plan into the framework to see where are we in different processes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good idea. Thank you very much.
Just one short note on the municipal master plan. It covers 12 years of time span. It is revised every 4 years. So if you have a master plan that is that in its scope is not wide enough to implement or think about working in the ways that we do now with the framework, you might try to link it to a future revision process, or most likely you will in your strategic master plan or the main document you have for your city or municipality find some linkage somewhere, but do absolutely work as hard as you can to link it to your existing strategic and budgetary processes. Because if this becomes a process on the side of your normal strategic or budgetary processes, it's not as easy to make it succeed.
Tina, my apologies. I should have asked you to just introduce yourself and the type of work that you do in a few words only.
Pardon, can you repeat again? What do you mean? Who I am?
Please introduce yourself and the work that you do.
I'm Tiina Hallimäe and I work for Võru town government, and we are Follower City. And at the moment we are in a very early process of policy division part, because it took us quite a long time to understand what it is and how can we do it. But thanks to all different learning workshops, I think we are starting to understand what we have to do. And yeah, and our challenge is that we just finalized 2 years ago our development plan, and now we have to find a good link and method how to make a new bold city vision and link it to our national things and our development plans that are just made. Because if we tell to politicians that we want to do a new development plan, then they said, why? We just did it. So we have to find a good way to find the thing how to combine those and achieve the project.
Thank you, Tina. Mm-hmm. That was most helpful. And in fact, I think all the municipalities have the same challenge of how do we integrate the Bold City Vision framework into their own local development plans. So thank you, Tina, for that. Next, I would like to ask my colleague, Rosie Webb, to introduce herself and what she does and to ask a question.
Thanks, Mihai. So I'm Rosie Webb. I work in Urban Innovation Department in Limerick City and County Council, and we are working in the CityxChange in the area of community participation and accelerating the DPEBs through that. So first of all, I have to thank you, because it was a really interesting and clear presentation, and it's immediately apparent the potential for those two things that you talked about, to find a common language and what are sometimes very high level ideas, and importantly, the understanding, but also helping people to find each other. And particularly when you have it, in the governance, processes, it makes that it's immediately apparent to see how that could happen. And my specific questions are around, have you guys used digital platforms? And there's sort of 3 areas. Just have you used digital platforms in your workshop? There's some ones that we've been using that seem immediately to be useful for this. Secondly, have you been putting them up onto a website, you know, even live while you're doing them so that people can see what's happening? And thirdly, have you offered them out for groups to self-organize their own workshops that could then contribute to the, you know, larger common understanding, and that they could find themselves without you having to do that?
Yes, I'll try and answer. No, we were very analog, Post-it and this big framework on the table. But doing the workshop, I was kind of secretly wishing for a digital system.
Yes.
That would have made it much easier for us than sitting, taking all the Post-it notes and putting them into an Excel and so on. So that's something that we would want to work on. How can we do this in a more convenient way for working further? Actually, in workshop number 2, Geir said to me in a break we had that oh, we should have streamed this. So we have talked to the Norwegian, what's it called in English?
It is the Norwegian organization that organizes municipalities and regions in all of Norway.
Yes, about doing a session where I could kind of have a workshop and go through the framework, and that we could tape it and stream it so that it could be useful for other municipalities and anyone who really wants to try and work with it that way. And in the organization as well, I agree with you. There's a big potential on using the framework for self-organization and work into different units in the organization. But we need to bring about more understanding about the framework before we can kind of roll it out into the organization. So that will be a point of action to find out how can we do that in a good way. And using, I use it, you know, whenever I'm in a meeting, I always take up the framework and say, well, if we look at this, you can see here, and so on, try and build understanding over time, but also to do it more systematically in the future.
I'll just comment briefly to say that we've been using a platform called Mural for our own internal workshops, and it seems particularly suited to this methodology. And then secondly, the thing that we have been kind of developing ourselves in terms of thoughts is this idea of training ambassadors, particularly working with college students to actually maybe be trained to help community groups run these type of workshops themselves. So I'll be very interested to work with you, and as we develop this, we'll be embarking on this ourselves. So it'd be great to have the connection.
Very eager to connect.
Yeah,
perfect.
Thank you, Rosie, for the questions, and Gerrit Ann for the answers. I'd like to remind everybody we still have time for questions, and if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand using the participants option on your Zoom screen. It's right at the bottom next to stop video and invite. We have a question from Chinyu. So Chinyu, if you want to go ahead and present yourself and ask the question.
Hello, everybody. I'm from the city of Trondheim. I'm a climate advisor. So I have a question, because I have heard about Asker putting a lot of focus on SDGs. Could you tell us a little bit about the background, why this, you are probably one of the first municipalities in Norway picking this as the topic for your municipal master plan. So what was the background, and do you, how easy or difficult is it for your top leadership to embrace SDGs in the work? And also, I see the value of bringing SDG. I put up 3 keywords when I was listening to your great presentation. First of all, it's a holistic approach, because it helps a municipality to understand what kind of service we're actually providing to our citizen as a whole. And also, one keyword that Bert Ola was mentioning in the chat, dynamic. I think every city will get its own version of understanding and using framework. And lastly, continuity. So I will understand what kind of project deliverables the Sustainable Asker is looking at right now. You're working on the municipal master plan, but when the plan is approved, what would happen afterwards? Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and answer. The history of why we have been working on the SDGs like we have has to do with the merger of the 3 municipalities. That's where it started. So in 2016, our politicians actually decided that the new municipality was to be built on the SDGs. And as far as we know, we haven't found anyone who has done that the same way as we have. So we have gone a long way, and we've used years on coming as far as we have today, I would say. Our experience is that the SDGs is a framework that anyone relates to, be it politicians or citizens or people in our organization. It provides kind of a sense of meaning in working together and a purpose, which is great into processes. It helps the dynamics of processes, and it also helps as a common language for discussing challenges, discussing where we are, where we need to be going forward. So, so the answer to the why is actually we and our politicians thought it was a great idea, and it has also given us a basis for working together with our citizens that is quite unique. In relation to the program, we are looking at areas of change, building on the KPI assessment that we have done together with U4SSE, the UN program for implementation of the SDGs, and also the understanding of a report called The Future Is Now, which is probably quite a few of you will know the report. It's a scientific report about where are we and what do we need to focus on and how do we go forward to achieve the goals within 2030. So based on these two and the mapping, of course, of what we already are doing, we are now looking at 4 areas of change, with one of them being well-being and human capabilities for change. One of them being climate planning. We're not quite sure what we're going to call that area of change, but it's about reducing the climate impact from Asker. The third one is governance and innovation. And the fourth one is smart technology and digitalization. It's so hard to say that word. Digitalization as a way of working and supporting areas of change in planned and strategic way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerrit, for the very specific answers that I found most helpful. I don't think there are any other questions in the pipeline or anybody trying to ask questions. In that case, I would like to thank you both, Gerrit and Geir, for the presentation and the insight that you shared with us. It's something that we really need to do more, to share practical examples of how the Sustainable Development Goals can be embedded and achieved in the local communities through proper planning and future planning done by the municipalities. And just to pass on a message to yourselves from the Chief Executive of Trondheim Kommune, who said that it has been an impressive presentation and that you guys are front runners here. So Morten Walden has actually passed on this message to yourself. I would also like to thank you both for making the time. I'd like to thank all the participants for joining us today, and I'd like to also thank my colleague in Trondheim Kommune, Silja Ronningsen, for coming up with the idea and connecting us in making this webinar possible. Also, it's important to note that this collaboration between cities across Europe was possible due to the European funding that we received in the CityxChange project under the Horizon 2020 program, and that the webinar will be available for review and future discussions on the CityxChange project website. Thank you all. Have a great day and even better weekend.
Thanks all. Thanks, Mihai. Thanks all.